They say weddings bring people together, but that night in Michigan, something came apart. Something I didn't even realize had been fraying for months. Seth, my younger brother, was marrying Emily, his college sweetheart. The kind of woman who made everyone believe in second chances, even if you weren't quite sure what went wrong the first time. They had broken up once, 5 years ago. She moved to Chicago. He stayed in Grand Rapids. And then one day, they reappeared on Facebook, smiling in matching flannel and holding hands like nothing had ever happened. Fast forward a year and here we were, at a lakeside villa straight out of a magazine, toasting to their love story like it had never been interrupted. Everything looked perfect. Lanterns hung from the trees, flickering softly over white tents arranged neatly around the lake. Tables were dressed in ivory linens, and mason jars filled with flowers swayed gently in the breeze. Seth had spared no expense. There was even a small jazz trio under the main tent, their music warm and effortless, making everything feel timeless. Madison and I had been married 4 years. She wore a long Berg *NDY dress that night. Subtle, elegant, low-cut in a way that I noticed even if I wasn't supposed to. She had done something different with her hair, pulling it back with a twist that exposed the curve of her neck. I told her she looked amazing. She smiled. The kind of smile that used to come naturally, but lately I had to reach for it, like we both knew we were playing a part. Still, the night started out good. Better than good, even. I introduced her to old college friends she hadn't seen since our wedding. We drank, danced, laughed at my uncle's terrible toast. For a few hours, it felt like everything I thought we'd lost was still within reach. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She rested her head on my shoulder when the music slowed down. There was no fight hanging in the air, no distance I couldn't cross with a single glance. And then it happened. We were slow dancing under the main tent, her arms around my neck, mine at her waist. I was watching the reflection of the lights shimmer across the lake behind her when I felt her body go stiff. I didn't understand at first. Her arms tensed. Her eyes locked onto something or someone behind me. She stopped moving. Her breath caught, just barely, but I felt it. "Hey!" I said quietly. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer, didn't even blink. I turned to look. Near the bar, maybe 20 feet away, stood a man I didn't recognize. Tall, athletic, dark gray suit, no tie. He held a drink in one hand, phone in the other, glancing around like he was just another guest. But there was something about his posture, the confidence of it, the way he scanned the room like he already knew every story unfolding inside it. "Do you know him?" I asked. Madison's hand clutched my arm. "I need to go," she whispered. "Right now, please." It wasn't the words that got me. It was the tone. It was flat, urgent, and something in her eyes looked less like fear and more like exposure. Like whatever this moment was, it had snuck up behind her and ripped something wide open. "Okay," I said. "Let's get out of here." We slipped out through the back of the tent, past the catering station and down a gravel path toward the guest parking area. I glanced back once. The man by the bar hadn't followed. He didn't even seem to notice her leaving. But Madison kept looking over her shoulder, like she expected him to. As we reached the car, she fumbled with her clutch. Her hands were shaking. "Who was that?" I asked, starting the engine. She stared out the window for a moment, chewing the inside of her lip like she was choosing between two different lies. "Someone I used to know," she said finally. "A long time ago. We had a complicated history. He wasn't a good person. I don't want to get into it." I didn't push her. Not yet. We drove in silence most of the way back to our Airbnb. She didn't say another word about him. Not his name, not what he did, not why she reacted like he was a ghost who showed up to ruin everything. She changed the subject, said her stomach hurt, that maybe the fish at dinner had been bad. She curled up on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling absently through messages she didn't want me to see. Later that night, after she had gone to bed early and pretended to fall asleep, I stood alone on the balcony overlooking the lake. The wind had picked up. A few lanterns still glowed down by the shoreline, forgotten and flickering. I kept replaying it in my head, her body going rigid, her hands squeezing mine too tightly, the way she couldn't even look at me when I asked her who he was. It didn't feel like fear. At least not the kind that comes from trauma or danger. I'd seen Madison afraid before, in airports during turbulence, during that one snowstorm when we got stuck on the road for hours. That version of her was vulnerable, open, honest in a way you can't fake. But this wasn't fear. This was dread. The kind you only feel when a secret threatens to surface. And suddenly, I saw it all differently. The locked phone, the late nights, the time she said she was tired when I tried to connect. I had chalked it up to stress. Work, life, a rut. We all hit them, right? I never thought she'd lie. I never thought she'd cheat. But the look on her face when she saw that man? That was the look of someone who had everything to lose. And maybe she just did. The next morning, something felt off. Like the house was too quiet, the air too still. Madison was already up, dressed, sitting at the tiny kitchen table in our Airbnb with a cup of coffee in her hands and her phone just out of reach. She looked like she'd been awake for hours. When I walked in, she smiled. A tight, too bright smile, and asked if I wanted breakfast. I said no. My stomach was in knots. We didn't talk about the wedding, or the man by the bar, or why she'd yanked me off the dance floor like we were dodging G***fire. She said her headache was better, asked if I wanted to go for a walk around the lake before checkout. I mumbled something about needing to answer emails. The truth was, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The look on her face, the urgency in her voice, and most of all, how fast she had shifted into damage control. That's what it was. Not fear. Not trauma. Control. It wasn't until we were driving back home, hours later, that I realized how long the signs had been stacking up. Little things I'd brushed aside because I didn't want to believe what they might mean. I didn't want to become one of those guys. The ones who spiral over a missed text or a late night and end up destroying a good relationship because of their own insecurity. But now I couldn't ignore it. Started with her phone. Madison had always been casual with it. She left it lying around, never set a lock screen, even asked me to reply to her friends once in a while when she was driving. But around 6 months ago, that changed. Suddenly, it was always face down. Notifications were silenced. She added Face ID, changed her lock code, and started keeping it with her, even during showers. When I asked about it, she laughed it off. "I work with sensitive client info now," she said. "I have to be more careful." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Then there was the jacket. About 3 weeks before the wedding, I found a men's jacket in the back seat of her car. It wasn't mine. Dark navy, Hugo Boss, size large. I remember holding it up, confused, thinking maybe it belonged to her brother or one of her coworkers. "Where'd this come from?" I asked when she got home that night. She barely glanced at it. "Oh, that courier left it, I think. I had some stuff delivered for work. He probably forgot it." She said it so easily, so casually, that I almost believed her. But now, thinking back, I should have noticed how fast the answer came. Too fast. Like she'd been waiting for me to find it. The next red flag came 2 weeks later. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I assumed she was in the bathroom. But when I got up, the lights were off. I checked the kitchen, nothing. Then I looked out the window and saw her walking back down the sidewalk in sweats and a hoodie. She looked startled when she came inside. "What are you doing?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "I couldn't sleep," she said, brushing past me. "Just went for a walk. At 2 in the morning? I needed air. I didn't push. But now I wonder where that walk really led." It was around that same time she started getting busy at work again, even though her company had gone fully remote. At first, I thought maybe she was taking on extra projects. She'd always been ambitious, but it didn't make sense. She'd be gone for hours, claiming she had to meet a client or a vendor or whatever new excuse fit the day. I asked once if I could tag along and grab dinner afterward. She said it wouldn't be productive. Too much pressure with me there. Felt like a wall went up between us. And the strange part? I didn't fight it. I told myself it was just a phase, that we were both busy, that couples hit lulls sometimes. But deep down, I think I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. One night, maybe a month ago, I remember sitting on the couch while she stood in the kitchen with her phone angled away from me. She was texting fast, almost frantic, her lips tight. I asked who it was. "Just Jenna," she said. "You've been texting her a lot lately?" I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Yeah, she's going through a breakup," Madison replied. Another lie. Jenna got engaged last spring. I saw the ring. It's funny how hindsight makes everything obvious. But in the moment, you're blind, not because you can't see, but because you won't. You tell yourself you trust them. That relationships need space. That snooping is toxic. That love means letting go of suspicion, even when it taps on your shoulder like a ghost. But after the wedding, that ghost wasn't tapping anymore. It was screaming. That night, after we got home, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, listening to her breathe. Steady, shallow, like she was pretending to. I kept picturing that moment at the wedding. The way she froze. The way her eyes widened. Not with fear, but with something else. Recognition. Guilt. Panic. It wasn't just the presence of that man, whoever he was. It was how fast she crumbled. How urgent she became about leaving. How desperately she wanted to avoid the possibility of me seeing them in the same frame. And then a detail clicked. Something I hadn't noticed at the time. When we were walking out of the tent, she glanced back once. Not at the man. At a group of people near him. People holding phones. She saw someone raising a camera. That's when she started walking faster. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of a photo. And suddenly all those little details, the secrecy, the late nights, the jacket, the 2 a.m. walks, they snapped into place like a puzzle I'd been pretending not to solve. This wasn't a woman being stalked by an old flame. This was a woman hiding someone new. The truth hit like a punch I'd seen coming for months but didn't move to block. And I think the worst part wasn't the suspicion itself. It was knowing I had the answer now. I just didn't know what to do with it. The day after we got back from Michigan, everything looked the same, but none of it felt right. Madison moved through the house like she always did. Made coffee, checked her emails, tossed her hoodie over a chair and asked if I needed anything from the grocery store. She didn't mention the wedding, or the man in the gray suit, or why she'd practically dragged me out like we were escaping something worse than rain. I acted normal. I told her I was fine. But I wasn't. I was watching. Every moment felt staged. Every conversation clipped short. She was using the same tone she used when talking to customer service. Pleasant, vague, impossible to pin down. She wasn't trying to reconnect. She was trying to stabilize. That afternoon, while she was upstairs taking a call, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the table like it held answers. My head felt like it was cracking under the weight of the last 48 hours. I didn't want to be paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who reads too much into everything and pushes away the people he loves. But this was different. This wasn't paranoia. This was math. Pattern recognition. Every thread I pulled led somewhere darker. And then something happened. Something small. Something stupid. But it changed everything. Madison's phone buzzed on the counter. It was right there, left unlocked, for once. A text lit up the screen. "Chris R. Still thinking about you. Last night was a lot. Call me when you can. Please." That name, Chris R. It jolted something loose in my brain. My brother had mentioned him in passing. Said he was part of Emily's extended friend group. Someone from the tech startup world. He'd pointed him out, I think. Said, "That guy's been around Emily's friends forever. Kind of intense. Keeps to himself." I hadn't paid attention then. Now I was holding my breath, staring at his name like it was a detonator. My hands moved without thinking. I picked up the phone and opened the thread. What I saw took every last piece of doubt and crushed it. It wasn't just friendly. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown emotional affair, and probably physical too. The thread stretched back weeks, maybe months, dozens of messages, long paragraphs filled with longing, inside jokes, fragments of Late Night and * Macy that I'd never seen in our own marriage lately. I scrolled slowly, methodically. One message stood out. Chris R. When are you finally going to tell him? You deserve more than this double life. Madison, I'm trying. I just need to be smart about it. He's still in the business. Everything's tied together. Business. Our business. My stomach twisted. Another message, this one a voice memo from 2 days before the wedding. I tapped play. Her voice came through low and shaky. Madison, voice, it's hard seeing him next to me, knowing I don't feel the same anymore. I can't keep pretending, Chris. I thought I could. I thought I could leave clean. But I don't know how without everything exploding. Leave clean? There it was. The plan. She wasn't afraid of the man in the gray suit. She wasn't triggered by some unresolved trauma. She saw him, and she panicked because she wasn't ready for me to find out. Because the only thing more terrifying than exposure was timing. I stared at the screen, my heart thudding so loudly it echoed in my ears. The man at the wedding wasn't a ghost from her past. He wasn't someone she feared. He was the one she was planning her future with. And I was just in the way. I didn't yell. I didn't smash the phone or storm upstairs and demand an explanation. I sat there, numb, my eyes locked on the last message in the thread. Chris R. You'll never feel free until you stop pretending. You know that. It was surreal being told by another man, via someone else's phone, that my marriage was already dead. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger takes energy. I didn't have any left. Instead, I walked outside, sat on the steps, stared at nothing. I think part of me had been preparing for this moment. Like my subconscious had already built the fallout shelter. And now it was just leading me inside. I didn't cry. I didn't pace or panic. I just sat there, watching shadows move across the driveway, realizing that every memory we'd built had now been repurposed, poisoned, by the fact that she had let someone else inside her world, and pushed me out without ever saying a word. What made it worse? I hadn't just lost my wife. I'd lost my business partner. Madison and I had built a company together, a growing platform that connected independent vendors with event planners. I handled the operations, the growth strategy, the partnerships. She managed the finances, the branding, the client engagement. It was our baby before we ever considered having kids. So when I saw that message, he's still in the business. Everything's tied together. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. It was positioning. She was planning her exit like a merger. I went back inside. Her phone was gone from the counter. She was upstairs again. I played dumb. Later that night, while she slept, I sat in the office and opened my laptop. I logged into our shared business dashboard. I knew the admin credentials by heart. She'd changed the password a few weeks ago, but I had set up access recovery months before. What I found was the start of a landslide. A series of fund transfers, not large enough to trip alerts but frequent and recent. All to a new vendor ID listed under a shell entity. Novacor Logistics LLC. Sounded real enough. But when I ran the name through a registry, I found the filing address. It traced back to a WeWork in downtown Chicago. The listed agent, Christopher Raymond. Chris R. I stared at the screen, adrenaline flooding back into my limbs like blood returning to a sleeping limb. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just emotional abandonment. It was premeditated fraud. She was siphoning off company funds, preparing a split, redirecting clients through side channels. I found internal memos drafted but not sent, stating that I was transitioning out of daily operations, that she was assuming full leadership due to creative differences. Some were time-stamped during our wedding week. This wasn't an affair. It was a coup. And I was about to lose everything I helped build unless I moved fast. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the office chair, surrounded by the hum of my laptop, a legal pad full of chicken scratch notes in front of me, and the faint sound of Madison breathing upstairs. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had slowed into something colder, methodical. I wasn't thinking like a husband. I was thinking like a man who had just discovered he'd been made the mark in someone else's long con. I had questions, hundreds, but only one goal. find out exactly how far this went before she knew I knew. The shell company, Novacore Logistics, was real on paper but hollow in structure. Just a mailing address and EIN, a few low-traffic web assets pointing nowhere. All the transfers Madison made had clever descriptions: vendor payouts, platform fees, consultation bonuses. They were small enough to avoid red flags but frequent enough that, over 2 months, they added up to nearly $43,000. All funds from our company's main operating account. Money I had earned. Clients I had brought in. Bookings I had brokered. I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt robbed. But that wasn't the worst part. I noticed something else. There were new folders in our shared cloud drive, ones I hadn't seen before, titled Expansion, Investment Pitch, and Transition. Inside were slides, full-blown presentations with updated branding, growth projections, and new messaging. But my name? Gone. In one deck, there was a slide that said, "Our founding team brings diverse expertise. Madison Carr, Client Growth Strategist. Christopher Raymond, Lead Operations Architect." No mention of me. Nowhere. She was rewriting history before it had even ended. And I knew the timeline. That wedding? Seth's wedding? That was her finish line. She wasn't spiraling when she saw Chris. She was off script. Something about seeing him there in that room, too soon, too exposed. It shattered the illusion of control. She hadn't planned to leave that night, but he forced the timeline. Maybe a look, maybe a signal, maybe she panicked. Either way, it meant her mask slipped. And now here I was, looking at the version of my life she was about to sell to the world, with me conveniently edited out. I opened our company's legal registry and checked recent filings. She'd submitted a name change request for the LLC. Not a full change, just a doing business as amendment. She'd listed a new alias, Beacon Nest Ventures. The paperwork had been filed 2 days before the wedding. She was that close. She wasn't just cheating on me personally. She was replacing me professionally. And I'll be honest, I sat there for a long time not moving, because there's something deeply surreal about watching someone erase you from something you helped build. It's like watching a home video of your own wedding and realizing you've been digitally removed frame by frame, replaced by someone else in the suit, someone else holding her hand. Eventually, I pulled myself together and did what I should have done the moment I saw that message from Chris R. I started documenting everything. I took *TS of every message, every transaction, every file. I downloaded metadata from company assets and flagged IP addresses from login histories. I printed the LLC filings. I emailed myself a backup of our client database and admin logs from our server. I wasn't being paranoid. I was building a record, because if she wanted to cut me out, I was going to make damn sure she didn't do it cleanly. And then I made one more move. I opened a secure folder on my personal drive, one she didn't know existed, and uploaded everything. I labeled it Exit Protocol. It was a phrase we used to joke about. Back in the early days, when the business was still just a wild idea scribbled on napkins and whiteboards, we'd talk about what would happen if it failed. What our exit would look like. Back then, it was hypothetical. Romantic, even. If this goes down, we go down together. A Bonnie and Clyde fantasy for 2 overworked dreamers who believed in what they were building. But this was the real exit. And she wasn't going with me. The next morning, Madison was back in performative mode. She made pancakes, which she never does on a weekday. She kissed me on the cheek while I was checking emails. She asked if I wanted to go to a vineyard that weekend. Said we needed us time. It would have been funny if it wasn't so nauseating. I told her I'd think about it, that I had client calls and might be swamped. She smiled, told me to let her know. By noon, she was gone again. Some vague excuse about running errands. I waited 10 minutes, then called our company accountant, Lydia. I kept it light at first. Asked if she'd noticed anything strange on the books. There was a pause. Then she said, "Honestly, yes." My chest tightened. "She's been rerouting things," Lydia continued. "Nothing illegal yet, but it's weird. Like she's prepping a shift in structure. New payment vendors, new tax IDs. I thought maybe you two were planning something big, but it didn't feel right. She hasn't told me anything," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll send you everything, Lydia said. Quietly. That night I got the full report. It confirmed what I already knew. Madison wasn't just running a side play. She was trying to push me out completely. She'd listed herself as the sole managing partner in a new internal memo, with Chris assisting in operational oversight. Worse yet, she had started tagging clients in private Slack threads, ones I was conveniently excluded from. She was laying the groundwork for a transfer of influence. And if I hadn't caught it when I did, she might have pulled it off. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That would have given her control over the narrative. Instead, I called my lawyer, Dan. Someone I trusted more than almost anyone. I told him everything. Sent him the files. Walked him through the structure. Told him I needed to protect my stake in the company immediately. He didn't waste time. By the next morning, we'd filed an emergency motion to freeze company assets pending review. We submitted fraud claims on key transfers and sent digital takedown notices to anything she'd registered using business property. I changed every password I had access to, revoked her permissions where I could, and flagged every suspicious transaction for audit. Then I booked an appointment with a forensic IT analyst. If Madison wanted a clean cut, she'd picked the wrong guy to double-cross. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to dismantle her plan, piece by piece. That evening, she walked through the door with takeout and a bottle of wine. She smiled like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. I just left a sealed manila folder on the kitchen table. Inside were **TS, bank records, timeline breakdowns, metadata, and a short note. You underestimated me. That was your only mistake. I walked out without looking back. She called my name once. I didn't stop. I didn't need to anymore. The night I left the folder on the kitchen table, I didn't go far. I didn't need to. I just needed to be away from the performance I knew was coming. The tears, the spinning, the classic routine of a guilty person trying to rewrite the narrative before it ossifies into something legal. Instead, I checked into a small business-class hotel across town. No fanfare, no bags. Just my laptop, my phone, and the evidence that I already knew would bring her whole scheme down. I didn't call her. I didn't check my messages. And I didn't wonder what her reaction had been when she opened that folder. Honestly, I didn't care. That part of me, the husband, the partner, the guy who wanted to believe the best about her, was gone now. What was left was the part she tried to erase. The builder, the strategist, the man behind the curtain she had convinced herself was easy to replace. She had tried to edge me out with a whisper, so I responded with silence. Not rage, not pleading, action. That week became a blueprint for how to destroy a lie without ever raising your voice. Day one, I met with Dan, my lawyer, again. This time in person. He brought printed copies of the fraud filings, detailed summaries of Madison's unauthorized business activity, and a preliminary injunction that would freeze access to every single company account, including the new shell channels she and Chris had been funneling money into. She's exposed, Alex, Dan said, sliding the folders across the desk. You caught it early, but it's wide enough to matter, especially if it moves into civil fraud territory. Will it? I asked. Depends how deep they took it. We're not done digging. But the damage already qualifies for material misrepresentation. You've got cause to remove her, legally, financially, operationally. Good, I said. Do it. Day two, I met with Lydia, our accountant, and our lead developer, Jalen. We'd built the company lean, which meant no board, no shareholders, and no complex voting rights to navigate. But that also meant systems were vulnerable, and Madison had used that to her advantage. She'd been manipulating back-end data to reflect a version of the business that fit her narrative. Jalen pulled up the logs. She was modifying admin access, he explained, his voice tense. Subtly, deactivating yours in places that didn't throw flags. Blocking reports from syncing to your dashboards. How long? Started right before Q2 reviews. So nearly 3 months. 3 months of deception. 3 months of manufactured silence. 3 months of her erasing my role in the very company she and I built, while planning to walk away with everything. You think we can reverse the access shifts? I asked. Jalen nodded. Already working on it. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to, and I could see the way his opinion of her had already shifted. The betrayal wasn't just personal now. It was professional, and it left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. I left the office that day with a restored admin profile, secured servers, and a fast-growing chain of audit reports tracing every unauthorized login she'd made. By that night, I had a paper trail too strong to ignore, and still I hadn't said a single word to her. Day 3, I filed an official letter of internal misconduct. It wasn't a flashy move, but it was strategic. Madison had drafted internal memos claiming I was stepping away from the business, that I was no longer involved in day-to-day operations. That gave her a paper trail to justify her decisions. But now my letter, time-stamped, notarized, and filed through our legal email, replaced the story with facts. I included attachments of the fraudulent filings, transcripts of her text conversations with Chris discussing the timeline, financial anomalies, login records, domain changes. Dan said it best. You're cutting her story off at the knees. The letter was sent to every client we shared, every vendor she had spoken to in the past 2 months, every partner listed in our CRM. No emotion, no blame, just facts. Transparent, clear, and signed by both legal and accounting oversight. I didn't accuse her in the subject line. I didn't need to. The truth did all the heavy lifting. That evening, I stopped by the house. I didn't tell her I was coming. I didn't plan to go inside. I just wanted to see, quietly, what had changed. Her car was parked in the driveway. The front lights were on. The curtains were drawn shut. But she hadn't moved the folder. It was still there, on the kitchen table. Unopened now, but untouched. I stood at the window looking in for a moment. Then I turned and left. Still no texts, no voicemails, no scenes. And still I knew exactly what she was feeling. Because Madison didn't fear confrontation. She expected it. She could play defense. She could manipulate tone and twist context. But she couldn't handle silence. She couldn't handle being shut out of the room where consequences were being written without her. And that's exactly what I was doing. Day 4, the legal freeze went through. It happened faster than expected. Dan called me just after lunch. She can't touch anything, he said. Assets are frozen. Accounts locked. Any transactions now have to go through court review. Even her personal spending? I asked. Anything tied to the company. That was everything. Madison had always blurred the lines. Personal meals on the business card, clothing labeled as event wear. Even her gym membership had been funneled through a wellness stipend she invented without telling me. Now all of that was gone. She still didn't call. But I saw a missed notification from an unknown number. We need to talk, please. I deleted it. Let her feel what I felt. Locked out of her own narrative. Day 5, subpoenas were issued. This was the beginning of something bigger. Dan had looped in a financial crimes investigator we knew from a prior client case. Nothing criminal had been declared yet, but Madison had tripped several flags. Fabricated reporting, unauthorized fund transfers, and potential identity misrepresentation if she'd filed anything with Chris's name under false pretenses. We filed for a formal review. By noon, an audit request had gone to every bank she'd used. By 2, her business card was deactivated. By 5, a representative from our largest vendor called me directly. I read your letter, he said. If even half of that is true, we're terminating her access. It's true, I replied. He sighed. Consider it done. Still, I said nothing. Still, she hadn't called. Instead, she emailed. The subject line was blank. The message was short. Alex, please. I don't know what you think you've found, but this is all a misunderstanding. I've made mistakes, yes, but we can talk through this. You're blowing this out of proportion. I read it twice. Then I moved it to a folder I labeled Gaslight Attempts. I didn't respond. That night, I watched our company's client dashboard light up. People logging in, checking status, accessing reports, reviewing the changes I had put into motion. I rebranded the homepage, removed her bio, posted a statement about realignment and restructuring. No names. No drama. Just a shift in direction. Quiet. Precise. Final. Day 6, I changed the locks. She wasn't home. I didn't need to ask where she was. I assumed Chris had stepped up, or at least offered a temporary place to hide while she scrambled to salvage what was left. But the truth was, it didn't matter where she went. She had already lost. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, not searching for anything, just looking, taking inventory of what stayed, what no longer felt like mine, what I'd soon be leaving behind. And then I paused in the kitchen. The folder was still there, and slid it into a drawer labeled taxes. Because that's all it was now, documentation of loss. A write-off, a line item, a betrayal, audited.